All right, so the Vance had an interview with Charlie Kirk, and of course, he have a lot to say about Kamala Harris in an interview with Charlie Kirk. So let's get on to this video and then hear what he has to say about Kamala Harris. So without any further ado, let's get on to it.
Kamala Harris said something to the effect that I have no loyalty to this country. Well, I don't know, Kamala. I did serve in the United States Marine Corps and build a business. What the hell have you done other than collect the check?
Oh, okay.
Senator Vance and future Vice President of the United States, welcome to the program. So you responded brilliantly there to Kamala's line of attack. What on earth is she even talking about there?
Well, she says that I'm loyal only to Donald Trump, which of course I'm loyal to Donald Trump because his agenda worked for the country, Charlie. And I think it's ridiculous for a person with her public service career and her basic career politician, she's been in politics her entire life, to come after me for my loyalty. What has she ever done for this country? Can she point to a single significant accomplishment? So it just pisses me off, Charlie, when somebody like that, with that level of service and that low record of service comes after me. So I decided to hit her, and we had some fun with it. And obviously the crowd liked it. So we're going to do that from time to time, Charlie. We're going to try to get the message out there and try to appeal to as many voters as possible. But sometimes when somebody punches, you got to punch back a little bit.
Yeah, and you're doing a great job, by the way, Senator. And I know this has been a whirlwind last week. Just let's take a step back. How are you doing? How's the family doing? How's Usha doing? By the way, you gave a great speech at the RNC. Usha was wonderful as well. You got 3 little kids. I mean, you go from not knowing if you'll be the nominee to now being in the spotlight of the most contested election in modern American history. How are you guys holding up?
We're doing good, Charlie. I appreciate you asking. And yeah, I thought Usha did a really good job. I was very proud of her. She was a little nervous, but I think she just knocked it out of the park. And what I tell people, Charlie, is I'm never following my wife again in public speaking. I always, you never want to follow somebody who's better than you. And I thought she just did a great job and made me tear up a little bit as a proud husband. It's a weird adjustment, Charlie. The actual campaign itself, I think, is going great, despite the fact that we've got the switcheroo. The life adjustment is just wild. We have Secret Service agents crawling around our house. Our kids are sort of asking, why are there police everywhere? And we try to remind them that they're our friends. And, we went for a walk this morning with our dog and our kids, and we're trailed by like 15 Secret Service agents. So it's a little weird personally, but we're getting used to it, man. And it's a good, my attitude is it's a totally reasonable thing given what's gone on in our country, the threats of political violence. And we'll adjust as we need to because it's worth it to serve the country. We have to go out and win. We have to make the people's government actually work for the people. And these small little personal sacrifices are totally worth it.
So I don't want us to gloss over what you mentioned previously. This race has changed in the last week. This feels like a coup, and it feels very dirty, and it feels as something we shouldn't accept, where Democrat primary voters have been disenfranchised, and within 12 hours, they're able to remove a sitting president and their nominee, and then all of a sudden hand this off all in the name of democracy. Do you believe that this was a soft coup to just try to reset the race, to tighten it against yourself and Donald Trump?
Well, Charlie, it's profoundly anti-democratic, whatever word you want to put on it. It looks like the Democrats are basically putting out trial balloons. Joe Biden obviously was rejected by the American people. Now they're trying to send Kamala Harris out there. I wouldn't be shocked, Charlie, even though I do think Kamala is going to be the nominee. I wouldn't be shocked if they tried to do another switcheroo if her poll numbers don't get a lot better, because it's clear these guys don't actually care about democracy. They don't care about the will of the voters. They just care about power. What I find so profoundly crazy about this, Charlie, is for literally years, I have been told that my party is the threat to democracy because, there was a riot on January the 6th at the U.S. Capitol, or because Donald Trump used constitutional means to try to challenge the results in 2020. Now, basically you had a bunch of Democrat billionaires get in a room with Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi and decide that the president of the United States wasn't allowed to run again. If that isn't a threat to democracy, I don't know what is. And I think that a lot of Americans, whether they agree with my politics or President Trump's politics, they think this is a little creepy. You shouldn't be able to do this to the sitting president of the United States. I don't care what his politics are. You should have to win the trust and the support of voters to run for president in this country. Kamala Harris hasn't done that, and frankly, neither has anybody else in the Democratic Party. The only person who did it, we may not like him, is Joe Biden, and it's bizarre to me how just quickly they threw him out when his political prospects looked bad.
So we have to deal with the circumstance in front of us. It's a un-American process that unfolded, but now it looks as if it's going to be Harris and whomever she selects versus, and so we don't know who you're debating yet. It could be Mark Kelly, could be Shapiro, could be Bashir. You'll do fine against all of them. Do you think this race has changed from a messaging or a tactical standpoint? I believe that she is far more liberal inherently and ideologically than Joe Biden. She is far more radical, and also she seems completely indifferent to the suffering of native-born Americans, specifically in the Rust Belt, that have been suffering from a open border and opioid overdoses. Do you think from a messaging or tactical standpoint, this changes the race at all?
No, Charlie, I really don't. And I think you have the right attitude here. It is profoundly anti-democratic what happened, but we can't sit around and whine about it. We have to go and run our race. And that's exactly what President Trump and I are doing. The message here is very simple. Do you want to eliminate Social Security and Medicare, bankrupt it, and give it to illegal aliens? Because that is the Kamala Harris plan. Do you want to eliminate private health insurance and replace it with Medicare for all? That is the Kamala Harris plan. Do you want to open the border to fentanyl and Mexican drug cartels? That is the Kamala Harris plan. If you don't want those things, then vote for President Trump, because he's the guy who's saying, I'm going to open up American energy, I'm going to shut down that border, and I'm going to protect Social Security and Medicare from Democrat politicians who are promising to give it to illegal aliens. The contrast couldn't be clearer, and that hasn't changed. The issues couldn't be clearer, and that hasn't changed. And frankly, Charlie, the failed record of Joe Biden, the only person who bears as much responsibility for it as Joe Biden is his vice president. And so Kamala Harris can't run away from that track record. It's a bad track record, and we have to constantly remind people that she failed as vice president. Her administration led to higher prices on everything from groceries to housing, a wide open southern border, a drug crisis, and we need new leadership. Whatever Democrat figurehead they want to put at the top of the ticket, we need to change direction from a policy perspective. And I think that argument will win the day for us.
Yes, and she is responsible. She is the border czar, regardless of how much the media tries to cover it up. She has called for the banning of all fracking. She has sympathized with defunding the police. She raised money for Minneapolis murderers and rioters. She has been in support of giving taxpayer-funded benefits to foreigners who are illegally domiciled into this country. So you being on the ticket allows us as Republicans to have a new outreach to younger voters, which is one of the reasons why I was so enthusiastic to get you on the ticket. So Kamala Harris will be 60 years old soon. You'll be the youngest candidate, presumably, on either ticket, unless there's something totally strange that occurs. What is your message, first and foremost, to young women who like the way that she dances on TikTok? Meanwhile, 88,000 kids are missing and trafficked into America on her watch. And also your message to young male voters.
Yeah, Charlie, it's pretty simple. I think most young voters, when I talk to my friends and my family who are sort of my age, maybe a little bit younger, they're worried about the basics. They're worried about whether they can afford to buy a house. They're worried about starting a family and whether they can afford the groceries and the housing costs that come along with bringing new life into the world. They're worried about whether they can raise their kids in an environment that's safe and secure and not overrun by illegal aliens who are committing violent crimes. So I think the basic pitch that we have to make is, we believe, meaning the President Trump, J.D. Vance ticket believes, that you should be able to raise your kids in safe neighborhoods. You should be able to afford a home. You should be able to buy groceries and put a nice meal on the table at a reasonable price. And that is what we're going to advance and argue the whole rest of the way. If you look at the track record here, Charlie, if you're a young voter in this economy with interest rates skyrocketing, how can you possibly afford to buy a house? I have people who've worked for me, Charlie, who make good salaries and they can't afford to buy a house in the Kamala Harris economy. So if you want to turn the page on that and get back to an economy where you can afford to live a decent life, you've got to vote for President Trump.
The generational divide is significant. And even with this switch, Democrats are doing far worse with younger voters than they ever would have anticipated. There seems to also be this undercurrent where they're trying to portray Vice President Harris as some sort of a moderate, especially when it comes to the issue of immigration. Her record on immigration makes Bernie Sanders blush. It has been for open borders, taxpayer-funded benefits. She's been talking about how she wants to make crossing into our country a civil offense. She compared immigration, customs, and enforcement to the KKK. How does that message resonate in your part of the world where you're going to be spending a lot of time campaigning? By the way, you had an amazing event in Middleton, Ohio, great homecoming event, another amazing event in Virginia. You're going to be kind of camping out in that region of the world, which for you is good. You get to go home almost every night, which is nice, I'm sure. How does that message resonate with voters in Western Pennsylvania or Southern Michigan?
You know, Charlie, I think it resonates terribly. The idea of letting in thousands, millions of illegal migrants, a lot of them who have committed crimes in their own country, and then giving them taxpayer-funded benefits, it completely turns people off. What Kamala Harris is basically saying is we want to allow millions of people in, many of whom are going to bring fentanyl. We want to decriminalize their illegal entry in the first place, and then we want to give them Medicaid and Medicare on top of it. So you're going to make the border crisis that has already caused a lot of suffering so much worse. I think the two biggest issues, obviously, Charlie, are the border and the economy, and they're obviously tightly linked. Because when you add 20 million illegal aliens, you drive up the cost of housing, you drive up the cost of food, you increase emergency room wait times. Kamala Harris is promising to bring in more illegal aliens and give them more benefits. She's going to exacerbate everything that's been wrong with the Biden economy for the last few years. We've got to turn the page on this. And to your point, Charlie, this is the argument that we have to make. I think we have to make a substantive argument that the Kamala Harris, Joe Biden agenda has failed for this country. She's going to double down on it. In fact, to your point, she's much more liberal than even Joe Biden was. So do we want 4 years even worse than the last 4 years, or do we want the 4 years of President Trump's leadership from 2016 to 2020? It's not a hard contrast. We just have to make the argument.
The more people learn about J.D. Vance, the more they like you. And the Netflix special is one of the top movies right now in all of Netflix. I know of at least 5 swing voters here in Arizona that were shaky on Trump. They're all in because of your selection as VP. Your speech was amazing. And, you know, there's a lot of people right now that are making their decisions, and they see a combined ticket for a future America that is uplifting and positive.
Well, that's a very interesting one, listening to J.D. Vance. So I'm not saying that they should not take notice of some of the things that Kamala Harris, is doing, but then I feel that they should focus on their policy and how they are going to convince people into voting them. Here comes November, because as they go about and talking about Kamala Harris this, she does that concerning the border and all those things, I'm not saying that they are not legitimate, but in putting a lot of focus on it could make them end up losing track. And then if you lose track, they could end up losing this very election, because a lot of people are actually undermining Kamala Harris. But then all I can say is that they should not undermine her, because they do not understand her weakness, and that is the problem. And then since you do not understand her weakness, she can end up exploiting the Republican, and she might end up winning this very election. Just only one thing that I didn't really like about Democrat is this high interest rate, because if there's a high interest rate, of course it tends to discourage manufacturers from taking loans in order for them to increase production of whatever they are doing. And then once manufacturing is low, production is low, what happen? People would bound to be unemployed, and then they can end up bringing chances of inflation. And then that is some of the things that we are having, and that is why Trump is saying that let's cut down the tax so that manufacturers can be able to take loans either for housing or for mortgage and all those things, and that can be able to what to make people want to have a lot of what employment. And that is when you can manufacture a lot for you to think of what exporting. But immediately you understand the manufacturing are low, it means that automatically you are going to what to import goods. And that is the reason why I see Trump is saying that no, look, let's not do it that way, let's cut down the tax and let's close the border. Even though we have listened to J.D. Vance, of course, saying in a sense whatever in a sense he believes in, but the one thing I like about him is that he tends not to lose focus in a sense by focusing or whatever he wants to say on Kamala Harris, but then instead try to sell some of the policy that him and Donald J. Trump, you understand, are having for the American people. I know that a lot of you have an opinion concerning this, and I wanted to drop it at the comment section. And may God bless you as you do so. So this is the end of my video. If you like my reaction, you should like, share and subscribe. If you have any video you want me to react to, don't forget to drop it at the comment section and I'm going to check it out. So guys, you remain blessed and I see you in my next video.